Welcome to the fifth broadcast of the T-ROH show. This is your host, Keith, and hosts Tony and Stu. Say hello, fellas.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Okay, we've got some updates for you. The Reign of the Heaven Society post, which, by the way, got over 105,000 hits last year, which was great. We would like to see that every month, but that's better than the 35,000 we had the year before. So that newspaper has grown over 150% in the last year. So that's a good thing. The update is, if you go to the reignoftheheavens.com, you can click public notices by the people. And there's a website there that the Reign of the Heavens Society Post created for people to publish their own public notices. We find that a lot of the newspapers are so controlled, of course it's corporate media, they're so controlled by the lawyers that if something just does not work, it's not good for their party, their Communist Party, they won't let it be published. So we'll go ahead and stop that. Reign of the Heaven Society Post is a legitimate newspaper. It has over the 6,000 subscribers required to be a newspaper. Believe me, believe it or not, and it does very well. So there it is. And believe it or not, we don't charge anything for it. It's free. You can put public notices on there, and you can also, if you have an organization that would like to do public notices, we'll create a separate section for your organization, just the name, and then whatever categories that you want put underneath it. For public notices, and you guys can do your own thing. But the last publishing we had, I think last night, explains a little bit more about it, so you might want to go take a look. And Tony, do you have some more updates?
Yes, we also have a new website for the T-ROH show. If you'd like to listen to some of the archives in the T-ROH show broadcast, you can visit trohshow.com, and that is T-ROHSHOW.com. So please be sure to check it out and listen to the most current and any of the other broadcasts in the archives.
Okay, and you can go to Spreaker also if you'd like, and look up the T-ROH show. We've got a Spreaker section there. I think we mentioned that last week, but the listeners are growing. And we do appreciate everybody spending their time, their hour or whatever for the week just listening to us. And we hope that we have information that everyone can use and it will enhance and benefit their own lives. And that's the whole purpose of the T-ROH show, to make sure that the information is out there and as accurately as possible. We don't like to go into fictions and that kind of thing just for pure entertainment purposes. So,
to that end,
what's that?
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick. To that end, do we want to explain a little bit about the public notice? People don't often have a use for it. Let me rephrase. They actually have a use for it. They just don't realize that it's a viable tool for them. So maybe we should spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes on public notice. What do you think?
Sure, we can do that. If people like to, most of the time you go and people will start a business. They'll come up with a name. Let's just say the T-ROH show. Okay, we'll use that as an example. The T-ROH show, the name was created, and if it's a business like, say they make widgets, they have to have what they call a fictitious publication once a week for 3 weeks, a fictitious name publication. Extremely expensive to do, sometimes up to $12,000, especially in New York. If you want to start a business and you come up with a name, to put it in the newspaper is up to $12,000 under a public or legal notice of a fictitious name. They call it fictitious name publications. You haven't even sold your first widget yet. And so what it causes people to have to do is it causes them to have to start a business in their home. And that's why the internet was so great, because you could start a domain, and then people just put a website, and then they started a business out of their own house. And they start selling right away. But when it comes down to it, within 3 or 4 years, you got the IRS knocking on your door. Hey, you got a business here. This is not legitimate, blah, 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 blah. You can't sell on eBay because eBay comes in and says, well, you don't have a tax ID number here, so you can't sell here. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. They start that kind of thing. Not realizing that even in the local newspapers, I think the cheapest I found, and this is, way back in Podunk country, which is, Podunk meaning population is not more than 800, that kind of thing. It's just a really small town. And I don't mean Podunk that they're horrible people. They're great people. But the fact is they'll charge anywhere from $800 to $1,200 just to start a business like that for a public notice or a legal notice. And the reason why jobs are not created, politicians like to claim that, well, I've just created this many jobs and that many jobs. Well, the problem is not the politicians, it's the newspapers. When you have a corporation, 6 corporations that own all the newspapers, those corporations are going to look at businesses, any new businesses, especially mom and pop stores, as competition. So they're going to stomp that out. So what they're going to do is they're going to raise the price of the fictitious name publication so that mom and pop, when they first go into business, they've got to borrow $100,000 just to meet the requirements that were set up by their competition, the corporation, that happens to own the newspaper.
Can we say monopoly?
That's how monopolies are created. They use the freedom of the press to create the monopoly to stifle the freedom of the press and to get rid of free speech.
So now the people have a tool to be able to publish their public notices, and in addition to that, being that the public notices are on the Reign of the Heavens Society Post, it's an international newspaper, so, use this tool.
Yeah, national. Just remember that. It is a national and international newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a free tool for people to start businesses. Legitimate businesses that has been published in a legal section of the newspaper, and they have a second witness, which is the Reign of the Heavens Society Post, as a witness to the existence of that particular business and entity. And since the Reign of the Heavens Society Post does business with the government of the United States of America, the government of the United States of America recognizes your business as a legitimate business. And we're offering it for free. And thank you for bringing that up, Stuart, because I don't think about those kind of things, and that's why you're here, buddy.
Yep.
Because you do. Of how to explain stuff like that. I just brush over it like it's, because I forget the rest of it. But that's the reason why, guys. If you want to fight or combat or have a chance.
Yeah. It can also help with postings of things in your defense during a controversy also. So
exactly.
It's a good tool.
If you witness,
I don't know why we're giving it away for free.
Yeah, I don't know either. But when
we'll have to go to work on that.
You can't get blood out of a turnip. Well, our publisher's affidavit, it does cost if you want to do that, or you can create your own publisher's affidavit within your organization that you just created through your own legal notice. So either way, you have a choice. You can use the Reign of the Heavens Society Post publishers, or you can use your own. And what we're doing is promoting businesses. We're promoting growth. We're promoting all these things that are needed that the newspapers and the corporate media outlets and newspapers are trying to stop you from doing so that they can get bigger and you can starve to death. Or
Exactly.
you have to go work for them and take out their garbage.
Exactly.
Or clean up their hotel rooms that you can't afford to stay in. It's pretty messed up, isn't it? When most of the workers that clean the hotel rooms that they can't afford to even stay one night in. So there you go. So that's what newspapers are supposed to do for you, folks. They're supposed to help you. They're not supposed to get a notice and say, here, we're going to slam you for $6,000 for doing this. Then they get a pat on the head by the corporate fascist guys. You know, yeah, that's a good boy. You did good.
Yeah. I mean, really, you could make an argument that almost all the apparatus within the American society has been turned into a weapon against the populace.
Let's get into that. That's beautiful because that's going to cover the, and believe it or not, folks, that was not planned. That just happened. So what we're going to do is we were going to go over the human rights compliant driver's license, but we're going to go into it a little deeper, like we just went into a little deeper with the public notices and legal notices in the newspaper to help folks at least start making a living. So if you go over to the American Herald, just AmericanHerald.org, it is in the Reign of the Heaven Society Post also. It just happened to find it here at the American Herald, which is another one of our newspapers. You have the government of the United States of America introduces human rights compliant driver's licenses. Now, we came up with that phrase in order to get the attention of international entities that their driver's licenses and their Convention on Road Traffic that they all signed back in the 60s, that the countries have turned it into a weapon against the people. So we were going to go into in-depth on this. So what we have here is, dear readers, an article was published in the American Herald about intangible property rights and how those rights are stolen without the knowledge of the license holder. Okay? So let's stop there. That's just the first paragraph of this. Let's stop there, and there's a link there, and we'll go over that so that we understand what intangible property rights in regards to the use of the public property. Now, there have been many reads on the international public notice in regards to the American nationals and the requirement of a driver's license. It says the reason the decision was made about the requirement of a driver's license goes a little deeper than rights and privileges or the issue of right to travel. How many people have been fighting the right to travel and they get absolutely nowhere? All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
That's how I got introduced to a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right to travel.
Yeah, I got a right to travel, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Okay, it says those arguments have never been resolved because the driver's license has nothing to do with the issue of right to travel or that driving is a privilege. Those two issues, nothing to do with it.
Irrelevant.
Completely irrelevant. It says the issue resides with the intangible property. Example, property would be the public highways and or the public property. So, when you say property, that would also be what they call tangible property. That's stuff you can touch. So when you're talking about public highways, which means you go out there and there's a common way out there where everybody's agreed, hey, we're going to split up our property and let everybody go through this. And we're going to transfer that and make that for public use. And that's all a road is. That's all a street is. That's all a common way is. It's a bunch of private property owners that got together a long time ago or elected some people into a town council and said, we're going to run a drive right through here. So everybody can get right through the town and it's good for commerce and all that. And everybody says, okay. So they create what they call an easement. And that easement, because if all people, when they own property all the way out to the middle of the road. And then the other side owns all the way to the middle of the road. And then the city or the town has an easement through there, which is for use of public property. That's public property. That you can touch. It's called tangible public property. Now, property would be the public highways and or public property. Intangible property would be the right to use public property. One type of property is just as important as the other. One is just as valuable as the other. So you have the vehicle, which is the tangible property. You have the car. You can touch that. Now you have intangible property right to use that vehicle, exclusive, or whoever you give permission to use it. That's intangible. So when you go out on when you go to the grocery store and you come out, or you go to Walmart, or you go anywhere else, and that's not a plug for Walmart, you look out in the parking lot, and you're looking for the vehicle of which you have in possession the intangible property right to use. Sometimes you have two of the same car, and you try to get into somebody else's car because you think it's your car because you're not paying attention because you're texting on your phone. Now, if you end up in that car and take off, you've just stolen somebody else's property, but you have also exercised an intangible property right that you did not have. That is called definition of theft. Exercising an intangible property right that you do not possess. That's why it's so important. Just as important as the property itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, and this is strictly for clarification purposes for the intangible property. Some people have a little trouble wrapping their mind around that. Examples of intangible property might be ownership of a patent, okay, ownership of a copyright, trademarks. Those types of things are common examples of what we're referring to here as intangible property rights. So you have the ability, although the patent itself, is intangible. It's not really in existence. You have the ability to sell those rights or transfer those rights to someone else. And that
the certificate of title. You're transferring your intangible property right to that vehicle.
Right. I was going to say, and that leads us to the vehicles. And exactly.
Oh, yep. I'm sorry. I ran in. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to cover that.
No, that's okay. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
I
didn't want to leave that out.
Yep.
So it was a nice setup for the delivery.
There you go. Oh, man, you guys. All right. Now, there was a case that came up with the state of Colorado about a driver's license issue. The American Herald is not picking on the state of Colorado. Just keep that in mind. All the states do this. Many states that enforce the Convention on Road Traffic will find the same issues within the enforcement of the treaty. Here are a few points being made with the case, and a whole document is available below. Okay, so you can see the document for yourself. You can take a look at it. Believe it or not, this case disappeared in a snap, completely from the records. Gone. The subject matter of the above case reference is about the possession and control of certain property rights. Specifically, this case references intangible property rights. The government of the state of Colorado has claimed that a license is suspended. This particular license deals with the intangible property rights of the individual here. The government of the state of Colorado has claimed those certain intangible property rights of the individual that was the subject of or was the party to the case. All people that claim a nationality under Article 15 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights also have claimed all intangible property rights, which are accepted and acknowledged by the government of the United States of America. As the subject matter of the issue is intangible property rights that are classified as human rights, the recognition of the government of the United States of America by the government or political party of the state of Colorado is irrelevant. So we weren't dealing with recognition issues with them. The state of Colorado didn't have to explain that, okay? Now, recognition by the government of the state of Colorado of intangible property rights. Now, here it is. Okay? They recognize intangible property rights. And this is all states. Every country recognizes intangible property rights. We just put theirs out here. Okay? The term property, within the meaning of the Due Process Clause, includes the right to make full use of the property, which one has the inalienable right to acquire. Okay, so when you guys are talking about inalienable rights, you're not talking about property, you're not talking about human rights, you're talking about the use of the property that you have. You have a right not to be stolen from, for someone to come in and steal from you. That's what an inalienable right is. Now, all roads and highways which are May 4th, 1921, by law open to public traffic, shall be public highways within the meaning of this part, CRS, public highways or roads. Now, all roads are private lands dedicated to public use by deed to that effect. Now, didn't we say just a little while ago that on the road you own all the way to the middle? However, all roads over private lands dedicated to the public use by deed to that effect. Okay, that's what we were just talking about. Now, for the establishment of a public way by dedication, acceptance by the public as an essential is as essential as appropriation by the owner of the fee. Pretty clear. Definition widely recognized by the states of the Union, enforced by the Union's full faith and credit clause. Highway, for the purpose of this chapter, only means the entire width between the boundary lines of every way publicly maintained by the State Department of Transportation or any county or city when any part thereof is generally open to the use of the public for the purposes of vehicular travel as a matter of right. Okay, so this is what they're saying. They're saying that your right to the use of the public highways for the purpose of vehicular travel is a right. So that's an intangible property. Let's set aside the car. Let's set aside the driver. Let's set aside all this other stuff. Everyone in every state in the whole country has an intangible property right to the use of the public highways. And the public highways can even, I think it even goes to alleyways. Everyone has that intangible right. Anybody want to say? Just jump in, guys, if you want to. I don't mind if you do. Just, if you got something you need to say, jump in.
Yeah, that's the heart of the matter right there. You have upon, basically upon birth, being part of the human family, you have an intangible property right to the use of something that's dedicated to the public. The roadway, and you read the definition. I happen to have, and I won't go in and read it, but I happen to have Colorado. Did you read Colorado's?
That was Colorado.
Well, yeah, that was Colorado. Okay, I happen to have that one in front of me, and it basically, just like you have an intangible property right to honest services. Most people don't realize that, but you do. Well, this is the same type of thing. You have the right for access. Right, and honest services means anybody that serves the public, meaning in a governmental capacity or a government capacity. The public has a intangible property right to the truth, to not be lied to by them.
And these aren't our own definitions. I mean, we're reading straight in this example from the state of Colorado, so this is their own information that's available to everyone that you can read.
Yeah, just hit vehicular travel as a matter of right on the internet, and it'll all come up. It comes up in every state. Every state recognizes this. Now, recognition by international law and the law of nations. This is also supported by Article 13.1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which declares everyone has the right to freedom of movement within the borders of each state. Okay. Further evidence of a claim by the government of the state of Colorado. Now, here's the thing, folks. We're not saying that we're trying to get rid of driver's licenses here, or that driving is not a privilege. We're not even talking about that. So people will listen to this program and rate within the first 15 minutes or so, oh, they're just a bunch of crazy-ass sovereign citizens that don't want to go by the law. Okay? So what I'm saying is, wake up, stupid. The guy that thinks that, wake up, stupid. We're trying to show you something here. Just listen a little bit longer, be more patient.
Yeah, I was going to say the other way they can do it is they shut the recording down now, and they run out and they start writing papers about intangible property right.
Yeah.
And they get themselves into trouble because they got an incomplete argument.
Right. It's an incomplete argument. We're not even there yet. So, folks, just keep on listening. We're almost there. Thus, it is clear. However, the government of the state of Colorado includes the word privilege within its codes and definitions to guard against the potential for any erroneous deprivation of the driving privilege by providing an opportunity for a full hearing. Okay? That is so twisted, I don't even want to go there. Okay? That's some twisted thing. That's their words. Now, thus it is clear that the government of the state of Colorado recognizes the use of the public highways as a privilege. The evidence for this privilege claimed by the government of the state of Colorado is its driver's license. Okay? So, it sees it as a privilege, yet in the same breath, it also sees it as a right. So what's going on here? Let's solve this problem now. The government of the state of Colorado does claim to maintain the public highways through its Colorado Department of Transportation. This is a noble, responsible, and valuable service to the public. We're not saying that they don't have a right to do that. They do, and it really is a good service. They do incredible work. Most of, if not all the states do incredible work, unless they've got a communist dictator in charge that is not allowing the funds to go rebuild bridges and all that kind of fun stuff. But that's a whole other subject. So, restrictions of the state of Colorado that must be obeyed by its government. Now, you guys have restrictions. The listeners have, they all, when I say you guys, I mean the listeners, you all have restrictions on things you can do and what you can't do. Those are called rules. Everybody lives by rules. And there are certain things that you can do and you can't do. Well, it's the same that goes for a government. Okay, even a communist government, if there was a communist government in the state of Colorado, it still has to obey its constitution. It cannot overrun the state. Communists seem to think that they can do whatever the hell they want. When that happens, they overrun the own state that they worship, that they claim its power from. That's why communism is twisted and sick. Because it doesn't make
Wrap your head around that one.
Do what?
I said, yeah, wrap your head around that one. They worship the state, but then they turn around and say, through the authority of the state, we're going to stomp on the state.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's crazy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious because it is true. However, the government of the state of Colorado is restricted from taking private property without just compensation. The Constitution of the state of Colorado, Article 3, Bill of Rights, Section 15 reads, private property shall not be taken or damaged for public or private use without just compensation. The taking of private property without just compensation by the government of the state of Colorado would demean the state of Colorado to a citizen and subject of its own government, and reduce the state of Colorado to a mere thief stealing from fellow citizens under the authority of states' rights. The government of the state of Colorado claims a privilege against the defendant. However, there is no evidence in existence that just compensation was tendered to the defendant from the government of the state of Colorado. Nor is there any evidence that the transaction took place by and between the government of the state of Colorado and defendant for the purchase of intangible property of the defendant by the government of the state of Colorado.
Woo. Booyah.
you have to, the state cannot take your intangible property right and then, or let's put it this way. They cannot claim an intangible property right that was never acknowledged, by the way, and then license it back to you as a privilege. They have to have a contract. You have to hand your intangible property right as for the purpose of vehicular travel to the DMV, and then the DMV turns around and hands you a license to license that property back to you in return for benefits.
What they bring to the table.
The DMVs of all the 50 states, none of them have any evidence that they own the intangible property right of the people. So the people are fighting back with evidence of, I have a right to travel. Okay, wrong argument. They're fighting back, being called sovereign citizens. Oh, they don't believe that we have to go. They have to go by their laws. They believe that they don't have to deal with our laws because they think we're a corporation. That's not, no. They're trying to defend their intangible property that the court is stealing. And the traffic courts can't figure it out. All they're doing is coming in guilty $150, guilty $160, guilty $500, guilty $800. You made it a cash machine. And then expect people to respect it.
Well, how many people holding a driver's license now that are listening, how many, other than taking a test, taking a picture and paying your fee, remember any other contract where intangible rights were mentioned?
Weren't even acknowledged in the agreement. So the government violated its own existence and has turned itself into a mere corporation. Now, therefore lacking consideration, a license issued and a license accepted does not exist by and between the two parties listed in the above style of the case presented. Further, without consideration, there is no contract, and without the existence of a contract, there is no controversy for any court to settle. So guess what, folks? You have cops accusing people of being sovereign citizens and don't want to go by the law, okay? Because every resident has to have a driver's license, okay? But the same guy is trying to defend his own intangible property right that the very cop that says you don't want to go by the law is stealing.
Yep. They're pretty slick.
No sense.
They're pretty slick.
And there's no contract between the individual and the DMV because no intangible property was transferred to the DMV to license back to the individual driver.
So then what's that driver's license people are holding?
There isn't one. That's the whole point. Not one individual in this country has a driver's license. They don't exist. They can't legally exist because no property was transferred for the license to be issued back to license that property back to you.
It's like Stu mentioned earlier, try to wrap your head around that one too.
Yeah, it's pretty complex.
Yeah.
It's abstract, and it takes a little intellectual training to understand. Maybe we can give another example, like most people are familiar with copyright. So if you write a book and you copyright the book, okay, Now, if I'm the copyright holder, I can dictate who's going to publish it, how many are going to get published and printed, where it's going to get sold, where it's going to get distributed, right? And that's it. Those are my rights based on owning the copyright to the book. Now, if I sell that copyright to Keith or Tony, I no longer have the say in those decisions. It would now be under their authority to decide how many were going to get printed in any given batch, and whereabouts they were going to try to sell them, how they were going to sell them, how much they were going to sell them. So the copyright, the intangible property was transferred. What did I get in return? What did if I sold it to Keith? What did he give me in return for that? Well, he would give me in our scenario here, he would give me financial compensation, most likely. So that's your transaction. You just kind of substitute the intangible property right to the use of the roadways for the book, and go from there. I hope maybe that helped clarify for some people.
Right.
But you've got
it's a little different in the category and the classification, but it's it's about the same.
Yeah.
It's almost there because it gets a little sticky. You know, like Microsoft licenses. You go and buy a program from their software. You go buy Microsoft Word, or I'm sorry, Windows 8, 9, 10, whatever they've got, right? And then once you've bought it, now this I have never really gotten this idea. I've never gotten this concept. You went out and bought their software, and they give you a license. You have to agree to this license agreement. Well, wait a minute, didn't I just buy this?
What did you really buy?
And people have looked at that licensing process as something that makes sense. But they don't question, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to license it back to you because you gave it to me? How can you sell me a product and then license it to me? So what did I buy? Did I buy the license or the product?
Sounds
or
like you bought
the license to use the product.
Uh-huh.
Which is kind of an antitrust law situation. A little bit of a monopoly going on there. Because you're not, and a little bit of false advertising, because you're not really saying that you're selling a license to use it. You're just saying, here's the Windows, well, you can use it here. Oh, by the way, got to sign a license agreement. So it's a privilege for you to use it. What?
It's like the right to travel all of a sudden turned into a privilege.
With no property being transferred. It's messed up. And this is why, guys, this is why world communism will never work. I'm not jumping in there. This is actually connected to world communism. So it's very possible that these patriots, these crazy deplorables, and all these guys believe that a driver's license contracts them with world communism. Why? Because it does. Because there was no intangible property transferred to the DMV. So there's got to be a larger political reason for this to happen. Also known as world communism, also known as international communism or global communism, is a form of communism that involves international scope. The long-term goal of world communism is a worldwide communist society, that is stateless, lacking any state, which may be achieved through an intermediate-term goal of either a voluntary association of sovereign states, a global alliance, or a world government, a single world state. Lacking any state, but yet they want a single world state. That's how much that makes sense. And that's how much your whole DMV system makes sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Period. So they want a single worldwide state. They just want a communist society that is stateless, lacking any state. So essentially, you just want your own state and everybody to be under your own state. So essentially, you're not a world or global communist. You're not anything but a guy that wants everybody to join his country, where he's in charge as a dictator. That's why it never works, because once everybody figures it out, they see how stupid the idea is, and they walk away. So you got a North Korean dictator that wants everybody to be, not specifically, that wants everybody to be under his government so he can tell everybody what to do. And everybody can worship him, and then he can change the time. The time started when he was born, and everybody's on a different time and a date and a year and everything else in his regime. And that's all that's going on with the world communism and international communism or global communism or dealing with globalists. The reason why it doesn't make any sense is because it doesn't make any sense. When we have talked to these people and we have told them, I remember talking to the King of the Templars and all those guys and telling them, look, the way you guys are trying to set up your NWO is basically retarded. That's what I told them. They came back. What are you talking about? And I said, the United Nations is supposed to be an international communications hub for countries to be able to communicate with each other. If the United Nations were all translators and understood the different cultures around the world, and when a certain government comes up to the United Nations and says, we would like to buy widgets, and a certain type of widgets, we hire the communicator to communicate to the other country exactly what we want, that they understand both sides of the coin. That's world peace. Communication. 99% of human rights violations are created by stupid or miscommunication.
Something lost in translation.
There you go. You, Tony, from a different culture than what I'm from. But what do? We communicate.
That's right.
And since we communicate, we become friends.
Yeah.
Even though we're from two completely different backgrounds. But we communicate. We're able to talk to each other. And if we ever have an issue, we work it out. But if you had a United Nations with an international communications hub, which is what the original General Post Office's mission is, to create world peace through communications. That's what the General Post Office is, folks. That's what the government of the United States of America is supposed to be, is a communications hub. A place where people can go to understand each other. Everyone wants the same thing. And the main thing they all don't want is to be left out. And when you can't communicate with people, it's very frustrating because you want to. The whole movie of Dances with Wolves, and the whole premise of the whole movie that was 2.5 hours long was communication between one character and the other, which was the medicine man.
And not to mention also the willingness of them to want to communicate.
And understand each other, right?
Two nations, yep. And
that's all it is. And if you had certain professionals that were highly trained, that understood full cultures, anthropologists, archaeologists, these types of people that were there, that were communicators, then you had linguists that understood different languages and understood the different dialects and understood the thinking of each culture. Now you got yourself a UN. But what would a communist do? He would walk up and say, hey man, I tell you what we can do. We can start controlling this by controlling the communications and by controlling this and that and have these people fighting, and then we can make war again. That's how they think. It can be peace or it can be war. But for the United Nations to sit there and create these UN resolutions and think anybody's going to respect that and even listen to it, you're crazy. It's not going to work. So the King of the Templars knows this. Nothing was changed. He knew that would work. And the very mission of the General Post Office of the Government of the United States of America is simply communications. Hearing from loved ones, getting a letter from grandma, getting an email. If you want to use some of General Post Office's communications, go to generalpostexchange.org. We have a combination Twitter, Facebook, and MySpace all in one, right there. And you can even get free General Post Exchange email. All you got to do is notify the trustee of what email you want, and it'll be done. You got a couple, didn't you?
Yep.
Stu?
Yeah, I was muted. Yes, I did. I got a couple email accounts there. Mm-hmm.
And these are emails that nobody's going to pry into, nobody's going to look into, because we have control over them. We're not going to look into your stuff. That's part of the deal. Unless you specifically ask us to go in and look. But other than that, no, it's none of our business what you email and what you don't email. GeneralPostExchange.org. You get free email over there. You can also go to GPEX. Use Continental dollars or points or whatever other kind of money you want. Doesn't matter. It's all communication, folks. It's all talking to each other, understanding each other. I'm not saying converting each other. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to give up yourself to understand somebody else or communicate to somebody else. It just means you understand them. And you can keep your independence. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's what the Internet did for people, is allow them to communicate where before they weren't able to communicate. So, I mean, there's just all this communication going on, but we don't seem to know how to communicate. So we're trying to provide the tools necessary for people to be able to communicate, such as Twitter accounts, free email accounts, stuff of that nature that's under the General Post Office, which deals in communications.
That's pretty much all we deal in. It's communications. And that's why you have two different statuses. The government of the United States of America actually recognizes, I think, three. Residents, people want to take their residency. People that want to claim their American national status but are not general postmasters. And then those that take their or claim their American national status through oath or affirmation. And become also a general postmaster claiming that, and they take an oath and affirmation with that. And that is the mission of the general postmaster. Now, in order to claim your nationality, you've got to go over to www.theunitedstatesofamerica1781.com. It'll say claim a nationality, you just follow the instructions. That's the United States of America 1781.com. It'll say claim your nationality. Click the button.
Now, as far as the human rights compliant driver's license, you don't need to be resident or a national. However, you do need to have a PMA. Do we have time to go into that?
We could, yeah.
Because people are going to want to know how they can get these human rights compliance licenses.
Well, residency is required. We do know that. Residency is required. You don't have to take a claim of nationality. And you don't have to be a national and a general postmaster in order to get a driver's license. Residency is required, though.
Okay, that's the minimum.
Yeah, that's the minimum that we have to do. And you can have dual residency. You don't have to give up what you have wherever you have it if you want to still deal with that. To claim an American national or national status, we use oaths and affirmations to make that happen. And then we translate those into pledges for the new order's language, how they speak. Because what do? We communicate with people. And the communists don't want you to take an oath and affirmation because they want to make everybody stateless. But guaranteed, if they ever get to that point, and their state, they're going to want an oath of allegiance and fidelity to their state. Just keep that in mind. You may not think you're required today, but that's because they're waiting to put their state together, then you're going to be required to do that. And if you don't do that, then you're going to be considered an enemy, and they're not going to trade with you. They're going to cut you off completely. That's what they call the mark, and it goes into all kinds of stuff. However, what we do is private membership associations, everybody's got this thing about their international person. Well, we've found where the communist companies, communist fascist companies that are running the courts and all that stuff, they're trading your account on the market. Like when they open up a case and say, oh, you don't have a driver's license, so you're against the law. When they do that, they put that on the stock market and trade the case. They sell it. So the only way to protect yourself from there is to do business as a private membership association. Now, people would think, well, that's just patriot garbage with all cap name. This is what they believe and try to make fun of you. That's what communists do. They make fun of you on the internet because they have no real intelligent response to it. Okay, so they have to make fun of you and mock you and persecute you and all that, as if you're going to go, okay, yeah, you were right, I'll go ahead and convert to communism. That's what they think they're doing. But what's really going on is you're exposing what they're doing. So everybody in this country has a person. Everyone has a person. It's not going to go away. There's nothing wrong with having a person. That's the way Western civilization operates. So there's no real reason to fight it. It is what it is. However, that person can also do business as a corporation. It can do business as an LLC. It can do business as a private membership association, incorporated, or an unincorporated private membership association. It can really do that. If you don't believe me, go down the road and you will see lawyers and attorneys on each side of the road that have their name up there, personal name, comma, LLC. So their person operates as a private company. Private memberships associations are protected by Rule 17b of the federal rules. I think it's 17b, 1ab, or whatever it's called. Those are protected there. And the reason why that is it gets rid of these arbitrary, old, ignorant ideas of let's dominate people, privileges, they're going to be our slaves, they're going to be this. It's an old, archaic idea that needs to change. And I think the PAGs put in 5 or 6 of these things, and 5 or 6 of these cases were dismissed. Now, that being the case, American nationals, you as an individual or man or woman, do not have to have a driver's license. You have a national ID card. And since you're able to travel in your own country freely, national ID cards are fine. They use national ID cards down in South America. Some of the South American countries use driver's licenses. Some of them use national ID cards. So that's not a new concept. That's not a crazy concept because they already do it now. And we use the driver's license as an option. And this is what the option is. Tony, would you like to explain the whole thing? Or let me know. I'm just talking.
Well, where do we start from?
Okay, on the process of a PMA. So what we do is you declare residency, and you can change your person. I'll just start there. You can change your person. Instead of doing business as an individual, you can change the person to do business as a private membership association. That's a registered business. So you go to the United States of America, 1781.com, and you can register an entity. You fill out the form, and then that's published in the Rain in Heaven Society Post. Now, your name will be John Smith Doe, PMA. Could have a hyphen PMA. Could have quotations PMA. We don't care. Either way, it's identified as an identifier with a PMA, private membership association. When you're dealing with the public, they deal with your person that operates as a private membership association. And you're the trustee for that private membership association, or you can be the president, CEO, you can be the vice president, treasurer, secretary. Doesn't matter. That private membership association can be granted the American nationals' intangible property right to the use of the public highways. In turn, granted to that PMA, the trustee can now grant that intangible property right over to the Department of Transportation for the government of the United States of America. That intangible property right goes to the Treasury, and the Treasury has declared that intangible property right, since the violation of a human right, $750,000, that the intangible property right is $750,000. That is now your bond. That's just the value. We have a bond document. It's called a surety bond. And it's written absolutely correct the way it's supposed to be written. The way all bonds are written, it's written exactly the same way. So, American nationals that do have a driver's license went through this process. It's a contract process. When the intangible property right is transferred over to the DOT, our Department of Transportation, gives you a 33 or 36 page contract.
It's about 36 pages.
With all of the traffic regulations that you agree to, or your PMA agrees to abide by, which means it's bound on the trustee. So, he's got a driver's license. And it's human right compliant, because the intangible property right to the use of the public highways has been transferred. And our Department of Transportation is not violating any human rights, because it's not required that you have a driver's license. You already have a national ID card.
And in case you do want it, unlike the driver's licenses from the state, full disclosure is on the contract.
Hence the 33 pages.
Yep.
Yes. There's a lot there.
No, most of it is road rules.
Yes, you agree to the road rules.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah. So I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in common language, basically what you've got is, as an American national, you have the ability to roam the fair countryside with your national ID. If you elect to have a driver's license issued to the PMA, then you agree, the PMA agrees to abide by road rules in exchange for the bond. That's a very simple way of intellectually processing the transaction. That's what's occurring.
Right. Now the states are having trouble.
And as Tony mentioned, go ahead.
No, the states are having trouble getting these people to get driver's licenses. Those same people were knocking down our door. Can I have your driver's license? So it's not about not wanting to follow the law. Your whole assessment and sovereign citizen assessment is null and void. It's stupid. Because those very same people that vowed they will never have a driver's license again in their entire life were bugging our Department of Transportation and the registrar to get over and sign the contract. We even waited a week because it was every Wednesday. And they would, can I get that done? I need to get that. You need to get that driver's license. The very same people that have fought and fought and fought and fought to not get a state license. And you know why, folks, they do that? Because when it's right, it's right. And they don't mind doing what is right. I interrupted you. Please go ahead. Stu?
I didn't realize that I got interrupted. No, I was listening to you. I had basically finished. So, I just wanted to put. Yeah, it's okay. I just wanted to put. Sometimes we rely on technical language and stuff, and it can be difficult to relate to for some of the folks out there. So I just thought I'd try to summarize quickly what the human rights compliant driver's license transaction is in kind of street language. That's all I was attempting to do.
Okay. And when you're registering the international person, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes a few days because it needs to be published once a day for 3 days in the newspaper, and then it gets published on the Secretary of State website. And then when you have all that in order, you can go to the Department of Transportation, our Department of Transportation at the United States of America 1781.info, and get further information on the driver's license. But that would be your first step, is to register an international person with our Secretary of State.
Exactly, and that, in other words, how that person does business. Because the person is claiming a American nationality, and the individual is, and they're working that through their person, and they're also changing the character of their person and how it does business, like a private membership association. And keep in mind that when you have a private membership association, you do have to have your own constitution and bylaws on how it operates. And that gets into a whole other show, which we really don't want to get into today. That's a whole other thing. And go ahead. Sorry.
Sounds like we're moving into wrap up here. Before I forget, I do want to mention there's basically a document that summarizes what we discussed today, called the Human Rights Defenders Investigative Report. And Keith, you're gonna put that underneath the video or something?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I'm gonna put the link to that particular document, and you were gonna say, I think it can be used in courts.
Yeah, we've published that. We've granted permission. It's copyrighted material, but you can use it in its entirety as an exhibit in any type of a court case you have. Besides the fact you can just download it and read it, 5 times and get the hang of it.
Keep in mind, folks, that not all states are bad. Not all states are doing that which is wrong or trying to push this communist regime crap. Right now, you can read between the lines. Our Department of Transportation has had 2 vehicles registered with it and removed from the state registrations. Our Department of Transportation is done correctly, and those that do understand it behind the scenes did get what we were doing and honored it. If you do it right, it's honored. If you don't, it's going to be...
Yeah, that's an important concept, I think, particularly for the liberty/guru crowd. I think the problem is they're using a third of the argument, they're using half the argument, incorrect argument outright, and they think they're going to accomplish things, and they're not. And there's some hard lessons to be learned if you're not careful.
Yeah. Definitely hard lessons to be learned. It can affect your life quite a bit. The reason why we do go with the private membership associations is because if found and or trafficked to the United States Manhattan Island to be traded on the stock market, Rule 17B is available there. That's if trafficked. Otherwise, you just do business as a PMA, private membership association. And the communists thought this was an issue, and some of them have reacted, some of them negatively, some of them have reacted positively. However, just please keep in mind, folks, that if you see a blanket thing going on, I'm talking to the people in the States, and this is coming from the governor also, which is Stu. We do have to react somewhat in a blanket manner because the United States Manhattan Island is so infested with communists. Folks, we don't know who the communists are and who they're not. We have no idea. They put on a really good show. And they know exactly what to say to make you think they're on your side, but they're actually working against you. So I'm saying this to the folks that are not a part of that communist regime. When you go up against, or you talk to, or you just say howdy, how are you, to a guy that claims to be an American national and he has our IDs and he's able to be verified, and you're not a communist, okay, he's not fighting you. This government is not resisting you. We're not after you. Don't take anything we do personal. We're going after people that are pure, hardcore communists where human rights means nothing to them. They have no belief in anything outside a state or what they can touch. And they're essentially just, what do you call it? Disgusting people that live in lies. And everything goes. And wants a God called the state that they can control. And wants other people to worship it too.
Yeah,
so,
we respect the right of the United States to exist. We're not looking to do harm to the United States, but we certainly can't allow nefarious and systemic human right violations to go to continue to be hidden behind curtains. And it can't continue.
It's got to be cleaned up.
Yeah. Got to clean up house.
Yeah.
Get your house in order.
Yeah, the brand has been
it's been hurt,
tarnished. Yeah, tarnished bad.
Tarnished
bad. And I'm telling you, the lawyers, you guys have tarnished your brand like no other. The crap that you guys pull in these private courts you guys set up in these public buildings, you have tarnished your reputation to no end. Now, granted, there are people that would just yell at you anyways, but about a good 75%, because you're hitting them at the worst time in their life, and a good 75% of you, though, we see you. We see you breaking laws. We see you breaking rules. We see what you're doing. And you're doing nothing but hurting yourself and hurting your future income and everything else by not following your own rules and not being fair to people and all this kind of thing. We see what you're doing. It's just disgusting. And you have no one to blame but yourself.
So human rights violators, beware. The human rights defenders are watching.
Speaking of which, Tony.
Yeah. thank you for listening and tuning into the T-ROH show. I know this show went a little bit longer. I believe it needed to be. And next week, we're going to be talking about the reign of the heavens. Now, you might want to call a paramedic ambulance to stand by when listening to that program, or have a defibrillator available to you. Because when you hear about that and you really see and it really sinks in, it's going to cause you issues. And you're going to be mad at us. You're going to be yelling at us. You're probably calling us a devil. Okay? But just keep in mind, it's the truth. As far as we see it, and what the words read and how it reads, and you're just going to have to deal. So next week we're going to talk about the reign of the heavens and why it is so dangerous to the churches that are here today and what they've been teaching people across America and many other countries. Thank you for tuning in to the T-ROH show. Would you fellers like to say goodbye?
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Enjoy the afternoon. Thanks for your time.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Tell your friends and share our links. We appreciate it.